Welcome back to Pokemon episode summaries. Today, I'll be doing episode 211, Machoke Man. The episode begins with Ash and the gang on the ferry heading towards Cianwood City, and they finally arrive with Janina. Ash and the gang instantly accompany Janina to the pharmacy, where the merchant there then gives Janina the medicine that was needed to heal Ampharos back in Olivine City. Giving the medicine for free after Janina explained how she was sent by Jasmine's grandfather Myron, who the seller knew. The seller also gave Janina some advice, telling her to take the express ferry, as it would lead her straight back to Olivine City, before nighttime even, as opposed to waiting for the regular ferry to return. Janina knew that she had to go on to the express ferry as soon as possible, not wanting to miss her chance, so Ash and the gang escorted her to the pier and watched as Janina boarded the express ferry, saying goodbye to her as Janina shouted Ash good luck for his upcoming gym battle. Once the ferry had departed, Ash decided to head straight for the gym. However, Ash and the gang then heard some noises coming from the beach below the pier and ran down to check them out, only to find a man training against his Machoke in some intense sparring exercises that involved the man and his Machoke battling against each other, with the man particularly focusing on getting Machoke to improve his defense. Once the man saw good improvement, he congratulated his Machoke on his great defensive moves and requested that he now switch to offense to improve that as well. The man was not very pleased with Machoke's offensive moves at the beginning, as he was able to dodge all of the Machoke's attacks. However, eventually, a karate chop from the Machoke hit him right across his chest, pleasing the man due to Machoke's strength. However, the man knew that a good karate chop wasn't enough for a fighting-type Pokemon, and instructed Machoke to use his submission attack on him next. Machoke obliged, as he picked Chuck up and threw him across the beach in a curled position, causing the man to hit the sand with a huge thud, leading Ash and the gang to run up to him to make sure he was okay, as that was quite the goddamn hit, and multiple new bruises were now visible on the man. Ash put his hands on the man to help him up, but the man simply got up by himself anyways, shrugging off Ash and the gang's help, as he excitedly stated to himself that Machoke's submission was perfect, indicating that that was all he cared about. He didn't care whether he got hurt, he just wanted to see Machoke improve. Despite the man being seemingly fine with being injured, Brock and Misty still state their concerns for him, stating that he shouldn't have let himself be fiercely attacked by a Machoke's powerful submission, with Brock adding that he shouldn't have provoked Machoke to purposely hit him with a submission. Like, if they were going to train, then he should have just had his Machoke use submission on a dummy or some shit. The man simply ignored Brock and stated to his Machoke how he knew how a dummy wouldn't work, and how Machoke could only unleash his full power against a real target. Chuck then began shedding happy tears, congratulating Machoke on how perfect its submission was, and telling him how proud he was of it, for all the effort that it put in. Machoke was very grateful for both the compliments and the fact that it perfected its submission, so it hugged its trainer and cried tears of happiness as well. Once this whole ordeal was over with, the man finally stopped ignoring Ash and questioned who he was and what he was doing in Cianwood, merely calling him by sport as opposed to his name, because he didn't know his name yet. Thankfully, though, Ash then told him his name and simply stated that he was a trainer, not even mentioning yet how he was in Cianwood to challenge the gym, before the man came to the conclusion that that's what Ash was here to do, immediately after hearing that he was a trainer. When Ash confirmed the man's suspicions, confirming that he was in fact here for a gym battle, the man then got excited as a twinkle developed in his eye, and he states that if Ash wanted to get to the gym, then he should get there as soon as possible, also instructing him to march on his way there, stating that it was faster than walking, specifically twice as fast. Ash and the gang oblige as they follow behind the man and his Machoke, marching to the Cianwood gym. But ironically, as they marched, even though Chuck was the most enthusiastic one to begin marching, he ended up falling behind, allowing his Machoke to take first place and arriving at the Cianwood gym first. Although the man had fallen behind even Ash and the gang were still immensely far behind the Machoke, so they told the Machoke to slow down, although Machoke obviously didn't listen, since it had already arrived at the gym. Ash and the gang eventually arrived at the gym as well, but since they were all hunched over, huffing and puffing, they were too preoccupied to even notice the building beside them being the gym. Just then, the man showed up, being the last one to arrive, as he collapses to his knees in exhaustion. Despite this, though, he still accuses Ash and the gang of being more out of shape than him, wanting them to still think he was stronger, but Ash and the gang just ignored what the man had just said, because they had more pressing things on their mind anyways. For one, Brock asked the man if he was okay after seeing him collapse, and two, Ash asked the man where the gym was, not knowing that they had already arrived at the gym, and it was right in front of them, which the man then informed Ash of, pointing to the building, when suddenly a whole bunch of people came out of the gym, greeting the man, revealing themselves as his students. This led Ash and the gang to come to the conclusion that the man happened to be the Cianwood gym leader, which would explain why he knew where the gym was so well, and obviously why he seemed to know all of the trainers inside. The man confirms this, stating that he was in fact the gym leader, stating his name was Chuck, the self-proclaimed leanest, meanest, toughest, roughest fighting Pokemon master in all of the land. After introducing himself, Chuck then invites Ash and the gang, along with his students, inside the gym so that they could enjoy a huge nutrient-filled meal, as Chuck wanted to get prepared for his gym battle against Ash, and knew that Ash should get prepared as well. There was so much food that even Ash was having trouble gulping it all down, although Chuck was having no issue whatsoever. That's why Ash was extremely concerned when Chuck's wife came up and offered second helpings to anyone who wanted them, along with entirely new dishes as well. As everyone was taking second helpings, she then came over to Ash, not recognizing him, and asked if he was here at the gym to battle for the badge, which Ash confirmed, leading Chuck's wife to wish him good luck, although she assured Ash that he wouldn't actually need good luck, stating that she was confident Ash could beat her husband, calling him flabby in the process, which angered Chuck, as he tried to deny the insult, but his wife merely laughed, knowing that there was no way Chuck could. Meanwhile, Team Rocket was walking around Signwood City by the beach, having arrived there after being on the boat as well, after being pulled by the anchor. They were talking about how annoyed they were regarding this trip on the anchor, and how exhausted it made them, along with the fact that they had no food, so that didn't help with their exhaustion either. Team Rocket then became even more annoyed, though, as Wobbuffet forcibly popped out of its Pokeball, leading Jessie to recall it. Suddenly, though, Team Rocket's annoyance faded away, as Meowth was the first one to smell a very pleasant smell, which Jessie and James then smelled as well, identifying it as a food-like smell, and rushing towards it eagerly, wanting to find the source of the smell so they could find the food. Meanwhile, back at the gym with Ash and the gang, they had just finished the additional helpings of the food that were offered to them, and as a result, Ash and the gang were extremely full, with Ash laying back on the floor, having to rub his stomach, since it was in so much pain. Chuck's wife became concerned that Ash was laying back because he felt sick from the food, not because of the fact that he was full, but Misty assured Chuck's wife that the food was totally fine and delicious, adding that she felt more energized from it. Brock then realized that he felt more energized as well, and it seemed as though Chuck and his students now did, in addition to them, so came to the conclusion that this food that they were served must have been a special type of food that he had heard about, called Pokemon Power Food, which was designed to power the person and the Pokemon who ate the food up for fighting. Explaining how Chuck and his students must have really been dedicated to their training if they were willing to eat certain foods just to get stronger. Ash and the gang then watched Chuck in amazement as he was still able to eat even more food, even after Ash and the gang had already reached their max capacity. Eventually, Chuck broke the silence which had filled the room, stating that he now had enough food to commence with the gym battle. So, Ash and the gang excitedly head to the stadium area, where the referee instantly reveals the rules of the gym battle, being that instead of a usual 3-on-3, it would actually be a 2-on-2 battle. Chuck then announces that he will be using his Poliwrath and Machoke, and sends out his Poliwrath first, leading Ash to send out Pikachu, hoping that he would have the advantage due to his electric-type attacks. Unfortunately, when Pikachu goes for his first Thunderbolt, Poliwrath merely dodges. The Poliwhirl then began to run around, attempting to dodge any more incoming electric attacks, leading Ash to come up with the idea to have Pikachu launch several Thunderbolts in succession, hoping that one of them would get lucky and catch the Poliwrath, since there were so many being fired at once. Sure enough, although the first 2 Thunderbolts missed, the third one made contact, shocking Poliwrath. Ash then tells Pikachu to go for a quick attack while Poliwrath was still weakened by the Thunderbolt. However, Chuck knew that Poliwrath could barely move, so he instead told Poliwrath to go on the defensive, telling him to use Focus Energy to focus his energy, get it? Haha. As a result of the Focus Energy, Poliwrath's defense is raised, so when Pikachu makes contact with a quick attack, he simply bounces off Poliwrath, unable to do any damage, as Pikachu lands on the ground, leading Brock to confirm that the quick attack must have had no effect due to Poliwrath's heightened defenses. With Pikachu down, Chuck then had his Poliwrath use Double Slap multiple times, and each of these hits made contact. Pikachu tried his best to get up after every hit, with Ash assuring him that he could, but despite this, Pikachu was unable to get back up and fainted, losing the battle. Chuck immediately started crying happy tears for his Poliwrath's victory, but wanted to make sure his masculinity was safeguarded, so he clarified that even tough guys cried sometimes. Ash then picked up his exhausted Pikachu from the ground and commended him on all of his efforts, telling him that he deserved a good rest after that, and laid Pikachu beside him for the rest of the battle as he debated who to send out next. Meanwhile, Team Rocket had tracked the smell of the food to none other than the Cyanwood Gym, as they had smelled all the food that Ash and the gang had ate. Thankfully for them, even Ash and the gang and Chuck hadn't been able to eat all of the food that was served to them by themselves, so there was still some food left over. Also, luckily for them, they spot that the door to the gym dining room happened to be open, so they ran up from their usual hiding spot of some bushes and began to chow down on the leftover food, amazed by its awesome taste. Team Rocket's luck had to run out somewhere, though, as Wobbuffet then forcibly comes out of its Pokeball again, and due to being hungry itself, it began to lift the pot of food up to its mouth and take all the food for itself, making Team Rocket very angry as they yelled at it. Although, even with all the yelling, Wobbuffet simply ignored all of it and continued eating, much to Team Rocket's dismay. Meanwhile, back at the stadium, Ash was still debating on what Pokemon to use next, and eventually came to the conclusion that he should use his Bayleaf to fight against Chuck's Poliwrath, since Bayleaf had the type advantage being a grass type. However, he worried that Bayleaf would have enough power left to take on Chuck's powerful Machoke. Regardless of this, he sent Bayleaf out, leading Chuck to congratulate Ash on his Pokemon knowledge, stating that it was a smart move for Ash to use a grass type. However, Chuck wasn't intimidated whatsoever, as he simply had his Poliwrath use Water Gun, which Bayleaf was able to jump up and dodge. Bayleaf then uses a Razor Leaf, which hits Poliwrath, followed by a Vine Whip, which wraps Poliwrath up, disabling him from escaping, allowing Bayleaf to slam Poliwrath on the ground with its vines. Poliwrath just barely managed to get back up, and Chuck saw that Poliwrath was in need of better defenses, so he told Poliwrath to use Focus Energy. However, Poliwrath couldn't focus by any means, as it was wobbling, barely being able to stand up due to all the damage. Seeing an opportunity to take out Poliwrath, Ash orders his Bayleaf to use Body Slam, and Chuck warns Poliwrath of this, telling it to dodge. But Poliwrath was too tired to move, allowing the Body Slam to make contact as Bayleaf landed super hard on Poliwrath, creating a huge dust cloud, and eventually, when the dust settled, it was revealed that Poliwrath had lost. Ash cheered, congratulating his Bayleaf on a job well done, as Misty complimented Ash's strategy, and Brock added that a major contributor to Ash's victory was the fact that Pikachu had already weakened Poliwrath. Meanwhile, Chuck was crying again, although the tears were still happy, as it was just proud of his Poliwrath for putting up a very good fight, congratulating his Poliwrath on his efforts as he recalled it to its Pokeball for it to take a rest. Chuck then turned his attention to his Machoke as he informed him that it was now his time to battle, and instructed Machoke to hit him with a karate chop first to get Machoke pumped up for the battle, along with himself, as for some reason getting hit by attacks was very comforting to Chuck, stating that they helped him get out of his head and focus on the battle, and he hoped that Machoke hitting him would help Machoke stay focused as well. Chuck was so adamant on making sure his Machoke was focused that Chuck ordered Machoke to use focus energy, explaining that it would help him during the battle to not overwork himself and focus on using the attacks appropriately so he could win. Although Ash's Bayleaf did not know focus energy, Ash decided that he should instruct Bayleaf to focus on the battle ahead as well, and helped it practice its focus by forcing it to use Body Slam on him, as Ash resisted it, pushing Bayleaf back, forcing Bayleaf to concentrate and remain focused on pushing to successfully push Ash down, making Ash happy as his training with Bayleaf was a success. Meanwhile, back in the gym dining room, Team Rocket had finished all of the food, with Wobbuffet eating most of it. However, Jesse, James, and Meowth were still immensely full from all the food that they had eaten before, and were laying on the ground in pain because of their stomachs, just as Ash was. However, Team Rocket commented to themselves that they didn't mind the pain and were just glad to have food, when suddenly, Chuck's wife came up to them, concerned seeing Team Rocket laying on the floor, and asking if they needed any help, obviously wanting to know who they were. This leads Team Rocket to introduce themselves by stating their motto, but their motto is then cut off by Chuck's wife, as she was bored by it, not even paying attention to their introductions, and instead just coming to her own false conclusion that Jesse and James must have just been new students here to introduce themselves to Chuck. Because of this, Chuck's wife suggests that Team Rocket needed to prove themselves as worthy students first, and stated that they should do so by helping her out with several chores around the gym, starting with doing the dishes from all of the food as she handed them to them, and then clarified that after this, they would have to do the laundry, scrub the floors, and make all the beds. Team Rocket obviously didn't want to do chores, so James tries to tell Chuck's wife that she misunderstood Team Rocket's purpose for being at the gym, and Meowth was just continuing to complain about having to do Chuck's wife's duties for her. However, Team Rocket eventually stopped complaining and began to do the chores, even dancing with excitement to do so, when Chuck's wife added that Team Rocket would get an afternoon snack of steamed dumplings as a reward for their work, with all of the chores serving as an appetite builder before the snack, making Team Rocket get excited obviously, along with Wobbuffet, who forcibly popped out of his Pokeball again. Was he going to help Team Rocket with the chores though? No. He was just going to reap the rewards. Meanwhile, Machoke and Bayleaf had began their battle. Despite both trainers ordering their Pokemon to focus, with Bayleaf staying focused independently and Machoke having to use focus energy, Chuck then switched his strategy from a defensive one to an offensive one, as he ordered his Machoke to attack with Karate Chop repeatedly, leaving Bayleaf to stay on the defensive as it managed to dodge them all. With the exception of one though, which was enough to knock Bayleaf onto the ground, leading Ash to get worried that Bayleaf would be knocked out, but Bayleaf managed to focus and get back up. Chuck then crosses his arms to hype himself up as he orders Machoke to go in for a cross-chop attack. However, before Machoke can get the attack off, Ash orders Bayleaf to use Vine Whip, and the vines tangle up Machoke's hands, rendering the cross-chop useless, since he couldn't get it off. This led a tug-of-war to ensue, as Bayleaf attempted to pull the Machoke to it, using the attached vines, but Machoke tried to pull Bayleaf to it, grabbing onto the vines that Bayleaf had attached to his hand, and began using them as a rope to pull Bayleaf. Both of the Pokemon's pulls seemed to be of equal force, as neither Pokemon was giving in, so this led both Ash and Chuck to tell their Pokemon to focus so that they could gain the upper hand. However, Brock knew that merely focusing wouldn't be enough, and suggested that Ash come up with a totally different strategy in order to gain the upper hand, suggesting specifically that Ash purposely have Bayleaf put slack in her vines to catch the Machoke off guard and make it lose its footing, as it wouldn't be prepared for Bayleaf to suddenly stop resisting. As for Misty, she agreed with Brock, telling Ash that it would take more than just brute strength, but also a smart strategy in order to win the battle, but Ash disagreed with both of Misty and Brock, stating that he believed his Bayleaf was strong enough to win without a strategy and merely just use its pure strength, wanting to prove to Chuck that it wasn't just fighting Pokemon that had brute strength. However, due to Ash being distracted by talking to Brock and Misty and not giving Bayleaf any encouragement or commands to focus, Bayleaf began to lose the tug-of-war as Machoke began to pull Bayleaf in, smiling evilly as it did so, finally having gained the upper hand. As soon as Bayleaf was close enough, Chuck then ordered Machoke to use his perfected submission attack, which was enough to send Bayleaf flying into the air, making Chuck and Machoke confident that they could finish off the vulnerable Bayleaf. However, Ash reassured Chuck that the battle was far from over, stating his belief that Bayleaf would win so long as he could still stay focused, even while in a vulnerable position. Sure enough, Bayleaf was able to stay focused while in the air, and use the height to its advantage as it sniped the Machoke on the ground with a Vine Whip. tangling Machoke in its vines, allowing Bayleaf to use the momentum when it landed on the ground itself to throw Machoke into the air, and slammed him right back down into the ground, severely injuring Machoke, allowing Ash to go in for another attack as Chuck had panicked, not knowing what to do. This attack that Ash went for was a body slam, which directly landed on Machoke, injuring him even more, leaving Machoke bruised. Ash then commanded his Bayleaf to get off the Machoke, preparing for the Machoke to somehow manage to get back up, and somehow Machoke did, despite its injuries, although it got up very slowly, indicating that it had not fully recovered. So, Ash ordered Bayleaf to attack again, knowing that the Machoke probably wouldn't be able to do much, and Bayleaf used Razor Leaf this time. This was enough to knock down Machoke yet again. However, Chuck hadn't lost any of his confidence, as he simply believed that Machoke just needed higher defenses, and told him to use Focus Energy to accomplish that. However, Machoke was too tired to even use Focus Energy, and was unable to get back up, losing the battle, which the referee declared, meaning that Ash had won, as he hugged his Bayleaf with joy and patted her head, congratulating her on doing such a great job in the battle, with Misty and Brock also congratulating her, complimenting how skilled Bayleaf was. Ash then stated his belief how he thought that Bayleaf was able to win because she had listened to him and done the focusing strategy, thanking Bayleaf for doing so. Bayleaf really appreciated all the compliments, so it wanted to body slam Ash in return, just like how it used to tackle him as a show of its affection. Now it body slammed him. However, Ash was able to stop himself from being knocked to the ground, as he did his best to focus, and commended Bayleaf on the body slam that it had used during the battle, stating that that one was better. Meanwhile, as for Chuck, he had went over to his Machoke, who had lost, to see how he was taking the loss, and saw that Machoke was sad, leading Chuck to comfort the Machoke by patting him on the shoulder and telling him that he was proud of him for the good battle, even if he did lose at the end of the day, stating that he was proud of Machoke's effort and that he was a champion in his book, whether he won or lost. Cheering Machoke up, Chuck then focused his attention towards Ash as he complimented him on his skill and thanked him for the great battle, stating he hadn't had a battle like that in a long time, and he didn't feel bad about losing to a trainer like Ash, since Ash was so strong. Admitting that Ash was strong, not just because of his good strategy, but also because of Ash's bond with Bayleaf, allowing Bayleaf to understand what Ash wanted it to do so that the strategy could work to its fullest effect. Advising Ash to make sure that he maintained his bond with his Pokemon, stating that all you needed to win the Johto League was a strong enough bond with your Pokemon. Ash promised he would continue to bond with Bayleaf, thanking Chuck for the advice, as Chuck finally gave him his 5th Johto Gym badge, the Storm Badge, much to Ash, Bayleaf, and Pikachu's delight, as they danced around in happiness, leading Machoke, Chuck, all of Chuck's students, as well as Brock and Misty, to join the dance. Later that night, Ash and the gang were still in the gym building, since they planned to stay there for the night, as Ash decided to check in with Janina to see if she had made it back to Olivine City, and she picked up the computer phone, revealing that she had, and had successfully delivered the medicine to Jasmine's Ampharos, adding that Ampharos was now instantly okay again. This led Ash to get excited, as he questioned if Jasmine was ready to battle him yet, assuming that she would be, since her Ampharos was healed, but unfortunately for Ash, Janina confirmed that although Ampharos was healthy, it was still weaker than usual, and Jasmine had requested to have more time to train her Ampharos back up to full power before her battle with Ash, or any other trainers for that matter. Ash was initially disappointed at this, obviously, as now he would have nothing to do again, but he told Janina that he understood Jasmine's perspective of wanting to fight at her absolute best, and clarified that he would accept Jasmine's request and wait to battle her until Ampharos was fully ready to go, promising to check in with Janina later to see how Ampharos was holding up. Ash then thanked Janina for her time and hung up before informing Misty and Brock of the fact that he would have to wait even longer for his gym battle. Chuck and his wife overheard this and suggested that Ash and the gang kill some time by going to a nearby archipelago that was much like the Orange Islands, called the Whirl Islands, explaining that the Whirl Islands were very famous for a whole bunch of myths and legends over the years, including having mysterious Pokemon. Ash and the gang discuss what they should do and come to the conclusion that mysterious Pokemon sounded very intriguing, so they decide to go to the Whirl Islands, with Chuck's wife gifting Ash a card that will pay for his passage on the ferry, which was obviously needed to get to the Whirl Islands. Chuck's wife then added that the reason why she was giving Ash a free ferry pass was because she was impressed by his battle against Chuck, stating that he must have been worthy enough of a gift if he was strong enough to beat her husband, calling Chuck fat again in the process. Chuck was angry at being called fat again, stating that he didn't like how his wife always insulted his figure, as he was proud of his figure since he liked to use his bigger body to his advantage during training. This reminded Chuck that it was time for him and Machoke to go out and do some more training, and he called out for his Machoke, only for his Machoke to suddenly appear behind him, and both Chuck and Machoke then proceeded to do the same stance together, which indicated that they were both ready for training. So, Chuck and Machoke then ran off, although as Chuck was running away, he reminded Ash to train hard, eat well, and keep his eyes on victory at all times, also reminding him to continue to focus. Ash thanked him for the advice, but Chuck and his Machoke were already gone by this point. We then see a scene with Team Rocket, who were now sitting in a park enjoying the popsicles that they had gotten as an additional reward for all of the chores that they had done, in addition to the previously promised dumplings, as well as an entirely new dinner. They were already nostalgic of all the food as soon as they finished it, declaring that all the work that they had to do was entirely worth it for the reward that they got, stating that they even enjoyed doing the work since they had the motivation of the food the entire time, wishing that they would be able to eat like they had today every day. We then see a scene the next day as Ash and the gang began to board the ferry with Chuck, his wife, and Chuck's Machoke saying goodbye to them, waving goodbye and telling them to have fun at the Whirl Islands, wishing them good luck at finding some of the mysterious Pokemon, telling them that they could come back to Cyanwood and visit their gym anytime. Ash and the gang thank Chuck and his wife for everything as the ship departs away from Signwood City. While the ship was sailing, Ash and the gang begin to question what the Whirl Islands would entail, with everyone stating what they were most looking forward to on the island, with Ash, of course, looking forward to finding whoever the mysterious Pokemon were, Misty looking forward to finding a whole bunch of cute water Pokemon, since they were going to islands after all, where water Pokemon were meant to appear, and Brock, on the other hand, wasn't excited for anything Pokemon related. He was rather just looking forward to finding some pretty girls on the island's beaches, hoping that they knew he was coming and they were waiting for him. Yeah, I doubt that, Brock. And thus, Season 4 of the Pokemon anime comes to an end as we head into Season 5, starting with the Whirl Islands in Pokemon Master Quest.